Hi everyone. First of all, I'd like to thank you for finding the time and visiting today's event. My name is Raymond, and I'm the brand and social media manager at Livet. We are a digital and physical hub for disruptive business building. We are based in Bali, and we also create sustainable remote work structures and also entrepreneurial skills. We do enjoy sharing our knowledge and learning from each other. That's why we host a series of events called Sharing is Caring, where we collaborate with amazing people from all across the globe to learn from each other and also to get inspired. And now I would like to welcome our speaker for today. Welcome, Alexandra. We're so glad you could be here today to share your insights on customizing your career based on your authentic interests and experiences. All right, let's get straight into the content, shall we? Without further ado, we will turn the time over to Alexandra.
Thanks, Raymond, and hi, everyone. Thanks for being here today, tonight, tomorrow, depending on where you are. Actually, I'd love if you guys could pop in the chat where you're tuning in from, just so we could get a quick read of the room. I recognize a few of you, so I have the advantage of knowing where you're coming in from. I know Nick's already ahead of us with tomorrow. So good to see you, Nick. Thanks for being here bright and early. Yeah, we have Sydney, yeah, New York, Bali. Nice, a nice mix. Awesome, so let's dive straight into this session on how to customize your career based on your authentic interests and experiences. Can everyone see my screen, by the way? Good, okay, awesome.
Yes.
So we've got 1 hour together. I know some of the invites said it was an hour and a half, but just to confirm, we have 1 hour. So we're gonna make it a power hour and get as much value out of the session as possible. So that said, here's a very quick game plan. First, I'm gonna give you a quick intro of myself and just kind of contextualize what brings me here today and why I'm so excited to be here. So again, Raymond, thanks for inviting me. Second of all, we're gonna learn about, what is this concept of customizing your career and why is it so important and valuable? Third, we're gonna look at some case studies so that you can get inspired about how could you do this based on some, real life examples of people who have done it. And I'm gonna share my own experience as well. And then finally, and most importantly, we're gonna run through an exercise step by step of how you can customize your career. And we're gonna spend the bulk of the session on this. So hopefully, whether it's late or early, you're feeling enthusiastic about kind of working through this example together. So just to give you a quick intro to myself, whoops, sorry, there we go. So for those of you, I know I recognize a few of you, but for those I'm meeting for the first time, I'm Alexandra. And in a nutshell, I help experts and organizations create professional development courses. So I'm a freelancer based in Montreal, Canada, and I'm currently working with a number of different clients. The ones you probably recognize most are, one of them is Maven, an edtech platform that is currently powering many cohort-based courses. So I'm sure those of you who are on Twitter or LinkedIn are familiar with it. It's registered in the US and run by a global team. The other one is Concordia University in Montreal. And I also work with their affiliated startup incubator called District 3. It sounds like a pretty fierce name. Someone once told me District 3 sounds like a military base, and I have to say, they do some pretty awesome work in terms of entrepreneurship and startup culture. So just to kind of give you a bit of a background of how I ended up in learning design. I know a lot of people say a journey of any journey takes 1,000 miles, but my actual foray into learning design actually is probably more like the journey of 1,000,000 miles, because in the span of the time where I graduated university in 2012 up until early 2020, I worked in 4 different countries. So you can see the cities mapped out on the slide. Most recently, prior to going freelance, I actually worked for District 3 full-time. And I actually started working for them shortly after the pandemic started, so in early 2020. And before that, I was actually working on the community and strategy team at Ubisoft, a global gaming company that's headquartered in Paris, France. And even before I joined Ubisoft, I'd done all sorts of roles in project management, events, administration, customer service. So all that to say, my path has been pretty complex, and that's ultimately what brings me here today. I'm not sure if this expression is universal, so I'll do my best to explain it if it's just a Canadian thing. But we say in Canada that, when we're trying to understand someone's career path or how their experiences fit together, we always say, what's the red thread that ties your career experiences together? I don't know, does that resonate with anyone? Have you heard that? Yes, okay, a few nods. Anyway, ultimately what it means is, how do your career experiences stack up clearly? Like, how is there an intention that aligns them all, as opposed to just having a bunch of total random experiences that make you look as if you've just been wandering off in every direction. And this is a concept that stumped me early on in my career, because originally when I graduated, I thought, I'd maybe go to law school and become a lawyer and everything would be so straightforward. But then, that didn't work out. I didn't get accepted into law school, and I decided I would actually, instead of staying on a conventional career path, I actually just wanted to follow my curiosities, even if I didn't know where they were going to lead me. So I decided to do that. And what happened is, I went to London and Sydney and Paris and did all of these really interesting things. But the problem was all my experiences were so different, and I was always trying something new. And so anytime it came down to whether it was, applying for a new job or updating my CV, I was always felt this pressure to strip down my experiences and say, like, how are they all the same? How did I, make it appear as though I had planned this so carefully to take all these different experiences, knowing that they would add up to a specific end goal? And the reality was, being an assistant manager at a law firm in Montreal was worlds apart from being a project manager for an aerospace company in London, or working as an events assistant at a global bridal exhibition. So all of them were so different. And I always struggled to answer that question of, what's the red thread that ties everything together? So I'm curious to know, just from you guys, you can pop it into the chat, even just a quick yes or no. Is this a dilemma you've ever faced, where you try and think, like, what is my clear-cut path? Or you feel as though your experiences don't necessarily add up into like one coherent path, like a traditional career path? So feel free to elaborate. Or you could also just add a yes or no. So I see a big yes from Lavinia, a for sure from Rowena, 100%. Could never keep a job that they never had anything to do with each other. Layla, not traditional at all. I changed industries 4 times and countries 5 times. Awesome. Okay, well, it's glad to know it resonates. All that to say, you're in great company today, myself included, because this is something that I've been struggling with my entire career. So I think we'll all get value out of this session and talking through this together. So like I said, the concept of having a red thread link everything together haunted me for many years, because I was always following my curiosity as opposed to like a well-defined path. And that's not to say I wasn't someone who's very motivated, because I was always career focused. So it was always like this internal dialogue I had of, I want to advance my career, but it's deep down, I want to follow my curiosity. So how do I find a parallel between those two worlds, those two needs? And, for lack of a better word, my red thread was ultimately a tangled mess, because like I said, I was in different countries, industries, jobs. So I was always wondering, like, when will this eventually come together? When will everything make sense? And then one day I stumbled across an article on Steve Jobs that completely changed my perspective. And I'm going to share this full article with you at the end of the session so that you can read it in your own time, because I ultimately think it's fascinating. But ultimately what the author did is he took this quote from Steve Jobs, and then he examined Steve Jobs' career based on this philosophy. So I'll just read the quote out. I know you can all read, but just for impact. You can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. You have to trust in something, your gut, destiny, life, karma, whatever. The approach has never let me down, and it's made all the difference in my life. Now that quote alone is powerful, and I know all of us have heard it many times. But what really changed my perspective and feeling validated that my curiosity-based experiences were an asset and not, something that I needed to compensate for, was this. So just wait for it. All right, this table that I'm about to show you, so I'm starting with a part of it to walk you through it, because actually I believe one of you that's here today described it once as a religious experience, seeing this in depth. So this table encompasses Steve Jobs' curiosity-based experiences. So in the column that we're looking at the moment, these are 8 experiences he had. And of course, it's not an exhaustive list, but this is just based on the author having examined, what were some of the most important ones that led to his success, the success of his career. So you can see from the top, everything from tinkering with machinery as a child to dropping out of college, exploring India and beyond. All of those things were curiosity-based experiences. And what's really remarkable about seeing them like one after the other is that they're so different and seem so random thrown together. Like if I did not tell you that these experiences were Steve Jobs, you'd probably say like, what the hell does this list have to do with each other? But what's amazing is that he just followed his curiosity. And I think we can all agree, no matter how random this list looks, things worked out exceptionally well for him. So now I'm going to show you how this translates to application. So if we look at the column on the right, you can see that each of his experiences, the author took a key application that came out of that in terms of how he applied that to his career and how that stacked up to his success. So again, if we start from the top, we see that his childhood tinkering led to an early understanding of craftsmanship and attention to detail. Sitting in on a calligraphy class, again, something that seems so random and kind of one-off, that kickstarted his appreciation for design. And that explains, why there's so many varied fonts on Mac computers, which nowadays doesn't seem so impressive, but back when Mac first came out, that was revolutionary. And his exploring India and Buddhism inspired Apple's simple aesthetic. And then one fact that I just need to highlight, because this one blew my mind, because again, it seems so random and you're like, what could this tie into his story? Is the fact that he went to live on an apple orchard very randomly. It seems so unrelated. And, none of us would ever put that on our CV, I would hope. But the point is, that's what inspired Apple's logo. So like that blew my mind and really just sold me on this whole concept of everything you do in life can be tied into the bigger picture of like what makes you unique and how you can be an asset to a team, a project, an idea of bringing it to life. And as you go through the list, you'll see other, it kind of goes in order of chronological order. So the ones in the lower half, you'll recognize like launching iTunes, creating the iPod and Apple TV. But if you look at this in general, it seems, again, like I said, looking at the first half, so random. And then the second half, seeing what came out of it, it just goes to show that this concept of, connecting dots really does have merit. And so this is why I decided to do this analysis for myself. So now I'm going to walk you through my own example. So everything on this list, I didn't actually go as far back as they did with Steve Jobs in terms of my childhood and stuff. I started with my post-university experience. So everything from my first job working in a law firm to my first international move to London and subsequent move to Paris, and up until most recently, which I put as working at a startup incubator. And then if you can see my application, sorry, is the screen loading okay? Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Sorry, there's a bit of a lag, so let me know if ever. But so here are the applications I drew from each. So for working at a law firm, I realized, from a young age, that taught me professionalism and attention to detail, which is something that is transferable to any work environment. Moving abroad taught me how to build a network from scratch, which again is, invaluable no matter what you do. And then the list goes on and on up until most recently working in a startup incubator taught me both about entrepreneurship and about learning design. So the crazy thing is I knew all of these things, but I had never really thought about it. So by mapping them out, I managed to actually say like, what are my dots? And like, how do they stack up? Like seeing them all there together, I was like, wow, this is actually a really great skill set that I was kind of overlooking in myself. And once I was able to articulate that as part of like my value proposition, that gave me the confidence to actually launch a freelance career. And it just empowered me to see that, taking a conventional career path, it isn't the only way to be successful. You can do it in a different way. So the idea of this session today is that I want to help you guys think of it in the same way and to get started in terms of like, how can you summarize your dots so that you start to look at yourself as an asset, no matter how random, if you want to go camp out somewhere, if you want to, participate in some random thing or take a break from your traditional, day job, how can you use that to your advantage rather than feeling like you need to fit yourself into a mold that's worked for other people, but maybe doesn't feel as, as fulfilling to you. So we're going to, hopefully you're excited to try this out. We're going to, sorry, I'm just looking at the comments in the chat. This list makes me think of the movie Slumdog Millionaire. Nice. So hopefully you're excited to try this out. So what we're going to do is actually, Raymond, if you don't mind popping the worksheet link into the chat.
Yes.
I've essentially made you guys a same table that you can work in. Again, it has 8 lines. And what we want you to do is just open it up and like I want this activity to be fun and experimental. Bear in mind, like we're doing this exercise now, but you can always update your list later. So don't like put pressure on yourself to think of the best things. Just have fun with it. It's early in the morning for some of you, late at night for others. Just get things down and know that you can always use this framework and make a better list and, refine it going forward. So just have fun with it. But the idea is once you have it open, we're just going to try and get everyone in the left-hand column. So don't worry about the applications. Just think strictly about the curiosity-based experiences you've had to date. And we're just going to try and jot down 6 to 8 of them. And they could be anything. Like it could be personal things like traveling, taking a cooking class or a dance class, something you did with your friends or your family, absolutely anything. And likewise, it could be professional. So it could be, applying to a job or moving abroad for a job, starting in a new industry, learning a new skill, taking a course, like anything that jumps to mind. The key thing is like, it's usually interesting how some experiences will stand out more than others. So don't worry about putting them in chronological order. Just go with what comes to mind. So I think that just went into the chat. So can you guys just give me a thumbs up if, you should be able to make a copy so you can make your own. But just give me a thumbs up if you're able, like once you have it set up so you're ready, and then I'll start the timer. We're going to do it pretty quick because like I said, the idea is not to get stuck in your head. You just want to get things down to get thinking and get in the rhythm of how to apply this. Okay, we have 1 thumbs up in the chat. Good. Agnes, may I have an hour? It's fascinating. Love it. All right, cool. Okay, I'm going to hit start then, and we'll have 3 minutes. I'll warn you when we have 1 minute left. Like I said, try and get at least 6 experiences. They could be anything. Don't judge yourself. Just put stuff down. And then we will go to the next step after. Yes, by all means, you can do more than 8. Do as many as you like. All right, so 1 minute left. Just wrap up. All right, 15 seconds. All right, pencils down. So how was that for everyone? You can call it out, or we're a small group, so you can call it out or pop anything in the chat. Easy, hard. Rowena, fabulous. Glad to hear that. Very interesting what comes up. Yeah, I found that too. That's why I think it's so interesting to do it yourself. It's funny what comes top of mind. Yes, with the time constraint in particular. This is why it's good, even if you're doing it with yourself sometimes, to put it as like to time yourself and make it quick, because you'll be surprised at what comes, like what pops straight out. And then other things you think might have been top of mind don't actually come to the surface as fast. I love that. Oh yeah, I've done some random stuff. Okay, you're in good company. I think I was cheating. Looks like my CV. All right, well, the good news is our next activity is we're going to jump into a breakout room. So we're actually just going to pair off. And the idea now is we're going to transition from looking at the curiosity-based experience and transitioning those into applications. So we just want to get our juices flowing in terms of how do these experiences convert to applications? You know, what's something that you could apply to a new context that would add value? And in terms of how I frame them, you might want to think of them as like, okay, based on this experience, I now know how to do X, or I now have inspiration for Y, or this gave me perspective on Z. It can be anything. And just as some examples, I shared the ones I mentioned for me and Steve Jobs, and for someone, a friend of mine who did this recently. You know, for mine, moving to London, one of the applications was building a network. Again, the famous Apple Orchard one, like I said, inspiration for the Mac logo. And a friend of mine who built a startup, one of the applications he learned was an appreciation for prototyping. So we're gonna pair you off and you'll have 6 minutes. So first, like take a minute to introduce yourself, maybe explain, you know, what motivated you to come today. And then you'll have roughly 2 to 3 minutes each just to share. You can either write them in your table or just talk about them verbally, but just try and pick 2 of your experiences and just think like what's something that comes to mind as a potential application. And then we'll come back as a full group. All right, so we're going to open the breakout rooms. Does anyone have any questions before we hop in? All good? Okay, cool. We'll see you in 6 minutes. Has the prompt come up for the breakout rooms? No? Okay. I don't, Raymond, is it working, or
Yes.
did you want me to do it?
I am assigning the participants now.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Should we pause the recording while they're in the rooms?
Yes.
Okay. Welcome back. Welcome back, everyone. So how was that?
Too short.
Yeah.
Too short.
Time.
Too short.
Too short. Did everyone get to share at least?
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, well, you know it's good conversation when it feels too short. So don't worry. The good news is we're going to do another breakout room. But in the spirit of moving quickly, did everyone kind of get the juices flowing and come to an understanding of at least 1 or 2 applications? Yes, no? Yes, I see some noddings. A strong thumbs up from Nick. Love it. Awesome. All right, cool. Well, moving straight along then, since it seems like people are enthusiastic. So now we're again going to switch back to individual brainstorm to just kind of reflect on what we just did. So now that the juices are flowing and you've thought about what are some of your applications, you want to make sure you're writing them down, and also want to challenge you to take in the next 3 minutes. I'm going to set my timer again. Try and do what you do with your curiosity-based experiences, where just get them down on paper. Like, don't worry if it seems like a weak one or something that's not all that important. Just write something down and go with what comes to mind first, but just pop in some applications, one for each. And then we're going to go into a breakout room and again, kind of work through them and see where we can strengthen them. So again, I'm going to put 3 minutes on the clock. So just write down in the right column what your applications are. All right. All right, 1 minute left. All right, pencils down. Like I said, don't worry if you're not done. You can always think more about this later on after the session. But so what we're going to do now is we're going to hop into another breakout session. And now that you have a draft list of your applications, like I said, there's plenty of time to refine your thinking. But in order to start refining your thinking, we're going to hop back into breakout rooms. And I want you to focus on, we're going to put you in pairs this time so you have more time, more air time, and you can get more feedback. But I want you to focus on 2 questions. The first one being, which applications stand out to you and why do you think that is? Because again, like we said, it's funny how certain things jump to mind. So share with your partner, like which ones were like right away, like this is automatic reaction and why. And then secondly, share which experiences you're struggling to draw applications from. And again, why you think that is. So you'll notice that some experiences seem to have a bit of a lag where you're like, okay, what is the key takeaway from this, or what's a significant learning I took from this experience. So focus on the ones that jump to mind and the ones that are really lagging. Share them with your partner and get their feedback, and maybe from their probing or questioning, it'll help you start reflecting and think, oh yeah, okay, this is why I feel so strongly about this, or maybe that's a signal that that's something you want to do more of, versus something that maybe is harder, is maybe something that like, oh yeah, like these type of things are stuff I learned, but maybe they're not as fulfilling to you. So they don't really come top of mind. So look for feedback as you're talking. See, if someone's looking at you blankly, chances are they're not really resonating with what you're saying. So maybe the way you phrased your application doesn't really translate to like a general audience. So it might give you feedback that you need to think about a different way to phrase it. If someone's eyes light up and they're nodding emphatically and seem really enthusiastic, chances are you've hit something that sounds pretty appealing and that seems valid and agreeable with. So all of this is just feedback you can take as food for thought to refine your list. So Without further ado, we'll open up the breakout rooms and we'll see you back in another 6 minutes. Should we pause the recording again?
Yes.
Our own mind. Someone will just say something and then you're like, oh my God, I didn't even realize that, or I wouldn't have articulated it that way. And they just give you this like jump start to move forward. So I love that. Anyone else want to share anything?
Yeah, Michael and I had a really interesting conversation about this idea, right, of having certain skills that may not be appreciated or may even set you back in an industry or role, right? But then you move into a different one, and all of a sudden they are a superpower and an amazing thing, right? And how to find those and how to use them, right? And how to put them in the spotlight, I guess. Like Michael's doing his mirror magic, right?
Yes, that's a good term for it. Mirror magic. Yeah, 100%. And I think like it helps to frame it too if you have a specific end goal in mind. Like when I did mine, I was trying to find the courage to go freelance. So that was kind of my end goal of framing everything of what are the applications that serve that purpose. You know, sometimes you could just do it generally, but it's like anything else where if you do this exercise now versus do it a year from now, chances are it's going to look a lot different in terms of you're going to be zeroing in on different things because everything is, you know, autobiographical in terms of like looking at, you know, what's relevant to you now, like your experience up until the present is how you see things. So this could change dramatically even in 6 months. But that's what's cool about the idea at large is it's not like it locks you into anything. It's just constantly having this perspective of everything you're doing, you know, comes together and makes you unique. And that's something that you should take pride in as opposed to thinking, oh God, like I need to like figure out how to make this like conventional so that people will, you know, respect me or value me. So really glad to hear you guys had some great conversations. So on that note, our kind of final step in this activity is just to tidy up your list. So we're going to take 2 minutes. I'll time it very quickly. And the idea is based on what you heard, just take a second glance at your list and see what jumps out to you. You might want to change like how you titled things or what you called them. And also bear in mind, this is a Google Doc. So you could just like add comments if there were like notes or insights you got that you want to remember to have. So feel free to add those to your chart. And then we'll just come back for a quick reflective discussion. So I'll put 2 minutes on the clock now. One more minute. Okay, so you should be wrapping up now. How are you guys feeling about your lists? Did they become clearer in refining them? Mine are too descriptive, not easy to make them short. But that's okay. I mean, I think there's a big part of this that's really like diverging. So going wide in terms of like listing things out. And then you can kind of think of it like an accordion. You can bring it in as you get more clear. But I think the main thing is it's better to have a lot now. And like we're very much in a generative state. And then the more you reflect on it, the more you can compress that. So don't worry about that. And it's okay too for like one, let's say for one experience, like what I did for starters was I put out maybe like 5 things that I thought could be potential applications. And then I decided on like the one I wanted to focus on. You know, your chart could have more than one. It's just to say that like there's always at least one you could pull from. Anyone else have any thoughts?
I can't believe it's already been an hour. I thought we were halfway through. That was so engaging.
Thanks. I'm glad. Well, that's a perfect segue, Nick, into our reflective discussion. So yeah, I just wanted to check in with how you guys feeling in terms of how did you find the exercise now? Just thinking of how you went through it. You know, what's your biggest takeaway? You know, what's one thing you might do differently going forward, or just anything else you'd want to share? We can just kind of, again, we're a small group, so we can just kind of call things out. But thanks for sharing that, Nick. That's great to hear. Anyone else want to share something?
Yeah, it's interesting. Sorry.
No, you go ahead, Lavinia. I'll do it later after you.
Okay. It's really interesting how like most introspection exercises, it's like a kind of a thread that you keep pulling at, and there's like more and more, right? Like that's the phase I'm in right now, that you keep finding like connections and then things kind of on the way that connected with other things and so on. So that was to me the really interesting part, that it's in many probably in many cases, and for others as well, it's not super straightforward, right? And it probably will start some internal dialogue, right, that can point to other interesting things. So thanks so much for facilitating that and getting us to that state of reflection and sharing and introspection.
Yeah, no, that's great, Lavinia. Thanks for sharing that. And to clarify, when I did mine, I took like way more time, and, you know, I'd be sitting there thinking like, okay, what's this one? And then like to the point Agnes made, like being way too descriptive and like, how do I fit this? So don't expect that like it's all going to be just done. But like I said, it's just about getting in this mindset. The biggest thing is just starting to look at your curiosity-based experiences as, first of all, they brought you fulfillment. So there's obviously something, you know, or you thought they'd bring you fulfillment, which is why you pursued them. So there's something there. And then like, what are the takeaways from that experience? Because another big concept of what comes into this is the idea of, you know, prototyping. It's this concept of design thinking and practice, where we might think we'll really enjoy something, and then all of a sudden we try it and we're like, actually, I don't like this. So your curiosity-based experiences, they don't necessarily lead us to something fulfilling. So that's why it's important to reflect on, okay, what are the things you actually enjoyed and, you know, could apply to other contexts versus things you're like, okay, hard X, don't want to do this again. So
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
For me, it's opening up my point of view, because when I see my career, I always reference back to my experience that are related to my career, right? The trainings that I have done, or the kind of jobs that I've done before. So I always based it on that. But with this, it opened my eyes as all of your life experiences also contributes to that, right? You just cannot just box just stuff that you do related to work, but other areas, other curiosity, even hobbies can contribute to your application.
Absolutely. And I think that's what's such an important message, is it's just everyone is so much more than their job, right? And their career at large, no matter how fulfilling it is, you know, your personal life and all these other aspects, they all touch on it and they all feed into it. So it's about finding that balance. So I love that. That's a great point.
Thank you.
It's been fantastic, Alexandra. The other thing I'd like to add, just in terms of the idea of experiences, choosing to the curiosity-based ones that were positive. I think to Nick's point earlier, sometimes our curiosity leads us down a path and we choose to do something, and then we experience it and go, geez, I'm never wanting to do that again. But there's still been a learning in there. And even if we look carefully, sometimes the learning is just, I don't want to do that. But sometimes there is still another learning that we can then relate to our career around saying, well, I've worked out that this particular style of work is not what I want to do, or this particular part of that, even though I hated the entire experience, there was one bit that actually was really valuable for me. So
Absolutely.
it's quite a nice way of looking at it as an additional lens, particularly if we start to feel a bit down about some of our experiences where we might have had a string of things that were not really all they were cracked up to be initially.
Absolutely. And it's one of those,
excellent.
oh, thank you. And it's one of those things too, where it's like they say, you know, you'll never know unless you try. So the advantage there is you're like, I'd rather have tried and realize it's not for me than to always wonder, like, I think I would have really loved that and not have tried. So thanks for sharing that point. Awesome. I'm just looking at the time. So we're coming to the hour and I'm going to make sure we're punctual. But just to do a quick recap, just so we remember what we did today. So the key things, you know, we did our intro, we talked about the concept, but the points 3 and 4 are the ones that you really want to drill down on. So again, feel free to look back at the case studies I gave you. So the worksheet, if you scroll down, you'll see I put the one for Steve Jobs and for myself. So again, if you're struggling and want an example, I also put links to the article, like I said, that really inspired this mindset in me. And actually the article that I wrote inspired by that article that Lavinia actually read and, you know, inspired this session. So you're welcome to check those out. And I've also added my details just to say thanks and keep in touch at the bottom of the page. And yeah, keep in touch. And if people want to continue working on these and at some point like touch base and get feedback or, you know, check in, by all means, feel free to reach out and we can always kind of regroup through the organization and see how we can help each other continue to think along these lines. But thank you so much, Lavinia and Raymond, for organizing this. I'll stop sharing my screen in case you want to.
Thanks so much, Alexandra. This was fantastic. I'm so happy you responded to my challenge or to my prompt of potentially turning this into a workshop. I'm sure many more people will benefit from this in the future. You should do it again for sure.
Thank you so much.
All right. So yeah.
And especially thanks for taking the time during your evening. I know you know you're busy and you have a lot going on, and this is late time for you. So thanks so much for doing that.
No worries, my pleasure. I'll hang around for a few minutes. So if anyone will stop the recording, but if anyone wants to hang back with questions, don't hesitate.